What's up, friends? It's your boy Erik Bledsoe. Yesterday I did a video called The One Question That Changes Everything. And that question is, do you know him? And today I wanted to do a follow-up video because, to be sincere, sometimes that answer is not as simple as yes or no, is it? Oftentimes it's more like the disciple who came to Jesus and said, Lord, I believe you. Help my unbelief. So in this video, I wanted to walk you through several appropriate responses to the very first Easter, which incidentally was in quarantine, and then talk about Jesus' response then and how that might affect you and I now. 30 Days of Hope coming up. So what do we do when it feels more like a mushy middle? Like I do believe, and yet, there's all of these very real things that are causing me to wrestle with my faith, to have sincere questions about all of this. When Jesus was first raised from the dead, there were 3 or 4 basic responses. Peter and John, actually, it says they immediately understood what he was saying about coming back from the dead. They ran from the tomb and told the guys, he's risen. And it was all good. And it says Jesus actually met them there in the house and had fish and chips, right? And celebrated. Mary had a different response. Mary had some run-ins with politics and the government and thought, you know what? I think there's something else going on here. I need to take a walk. I think maybe the government stole Jesus' body. She actually meets a guy she thinks is the gardener and pleads with him and says, where have you taken my Lord? It turns out that's Jesus too. And he calls her name Mary. And she realizes in that moment, oh my goodness, he is risen. And there's a third response, which is that of Thomas, famously called Doubting Thomas, but more just like the realist. And he's not there with the guys when Jesus comes in. He hears about it later from them. And his response is, I think it's all maybe hogwash. And he's more of a science guy. He says, unless I can physically put my hands into his nail prints, unless I can physically test it and put my hands into his side, I'm not going to believe any of this mess. It actually says that Jesus, a week later, makes a special trip back. It says that the disciples are still in fear for their life. They have self-quarantined behind locked doors. And Jesus, the inference is that he literally just kind of comes through the door. And he addresses Thomas specifically. And he says, Thomas, I know what you need, champ. Come here. Put your hands into the nail prints in my hands. Put your hand into the hole in my side. And it says that Thomas does. And he falls down and worships Jesus. Friends, no matter the response, whether it was instant faith, or maybe you had to work through a government coup, or maybe you needed more science to get there, the response from Jesus is always the same. He meets us where we are, and it's his presence that changes everything. And I want you to know that it's 2020 and that hasn't changed. Whatever you need, whether you are full of faith and are like, whoa, Jesus, like some of my friends, or whether you're like, I don't know, I think this is a little scandalous. Maybe there's a little bit of a conspiracy going on. Or maybe you're just waiting on more science. Whatever you're into, whatever your holdup is, your questions and your doubts, don't keep Jesus at a distance. He is seeking you. He meets the men in the house to celebrate with them. He meets Mary in the garden as the gardener, and he meets Thomas with a special visit just so Thomas can inspect him. I want you to know that Jesus is ready to meet with you now. There is this quote from the Lord, and he says, look, I'm actually standing at the door of your heart, even now, and I'm knocking. And if anyone will open up that door, I will come in. And it doesn't say he wants to beat us up. It doesn't say he wants to give us the what for because we had too many questions. And he actually says, I just want to eat with you. Like, I want to have a meal, which speaks of friendship and communion and conversation. He just wants to be with us. And I can tell you from first-hand experience as a guy who has moved through years of counseling and questions that Jesus and his presence changes everything. So I want to invite you, if you're in that middle, like, Lord, I love you, but I have some unbelief. I want to invite you to invite Jesus into that tension, to give him all of your doubts and all of your questions and do exactly what he asks in the scripture. He says, cast all of your cares and concerns and questions and worries and troubles on me because I care for you. And friends, that is good news. I love you. I am for you. Hope. Jesus says, in this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. I'll see you again tomorrow. Love you, friends.